game releases in 2020 rocked. I already made this clear in my video I made last year about the games I beat, but man was there some winners that came out. We had Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, Final Fantasy VII Remake, and a dozen others that just knocked it out of the park. 2021 felt slightly more sparse when it came to awesome game releases. Not that there weren't games that were released that were awesome this year, but it didn't quite compare to 2020, which gave me the awesome opportunity of going back to my backlog and beating some games I've been meaning to get to for a very long time. Here are all the games I beat in 2021 and my thoughts. So it started off on a really weird note. I played Disgaea Complete. I actually have never played a Disgaea game ever, and it was incredibly addicting. Building my optimal team was awesome. And as you know, I love doing my research, and there is a lot of research to be done on this game. On top of that, the story was bonkers and hilarious. The Fallen Angel fawn is amazing. Edna's treatment of the Poonies, at least I think that's how you say it, was so great. And Laharo's reaction to the succubus ladies, mwah, perfect. My biggest complaint with this game was all the extra content. I feel like for the majority of the content, I should be able to pick it all up before I fight the final boss. But the story takes a backseat to this extra content. And by the time you get all these extra characters that are in this game, you're so leveled that what is there to challenge you? Man, when Bioshock Infinite's trailer dropped, my jaw dropped. This game looked amazing. But it took me a lot of years to get to it because I was a little hesitant, to be honest. I don't really play ultra-violent games. Now, I don't regret picking up Bioshock Infinite. The best part of this game was the opening sequence. Being fired up into a rocket into this sky city, walking around seeing this automaton horse thing, watching how all the people live, it was awesome. But man, does this thing bog down mid to late game. It is pretty much just a mind-numbing shooter. And it was way overhyped. Like I said, I didn't dislike it, but it definitely doesn't sit up there with my favorite games I've ever played. Speaking of some of my favorite games I've ever played, I went back to Final Fantasy X. This might be the 5th or 6th time I've ever beaten it, but I've never beaten the HD remaster of it. I thought the graphics looked great. I think all the additions they put in worked really well, especially the customizable options when it comes to the grid sphere. Having Black Mage Yuna from the beginning was a game changer for me. I am convinced that the more I play Pokemon, the less I like it. I started off with the OG Red and Blue version, and I still love those games to this day. For me, Pokemon peaked at Silver and Gold. Ruby and Sapphire were great. I even enjoyed X and Y, but Sword and Shield suck. These games are so incredibly easy, and the amount of Pokemon thrown at your face just make any discovery stupid. All the new designs are boring and mostly uninspired. There was a few standouts. Ultimately, I could not wait for this game to end. The problem with Pokemon, I can't seem to stop playing it. They'll come out with a new one, and I'm sure I'll play it, and I think I might not like it either. In 2021, I found out that my backlog hid one of the best games ever made, Bloodborne. I knew so little about this game that my experience was fresh, intense, and spectacular. Bloodborne is a must-play for any person who plays video games. The challenge is perfectly balanced. The world and story and hidden lore are more fascinating than almost any other video game I've ever played. And when you sit back and watch the credits after fighting your way through the entire game, you will never feel more satisfied than in that moment. Now, having finally discovered the Souls-type games, I decided to go back to the somewhat OG Dark Souls. I played Dark Souls Remastered, and it was almost as good as Bloodborne. Almost. The armors, weapons, and characters were top-notch. Guinevere is a total babe, and Ornstein and Smog is one of the best boss battles I have ever played in my life. But there were a lot of things that hampered it down, especially after playing Bloodborne and realizing that they probably took what they learned from Dark Souls and applied it to that game. I took a break from the Soulsborne games and decided to revisit a game I didn't particularly like when it first was released, and that game was Fire Emblem Awakening. I remember my first experience playing through thinking, this is I felt overpowered and didn't really feel like it was absorbing my attention. And then the children mechanic hit me, and I thought, I do not like this. I wasn't prepared for this. I want to do my research, and I got rid of the game. Picking it back up with a much more mature outlook on how games should be played, I went in with no strategy and fell in love. Fire Emblem Awakening deserves the hype it gets. This is a great Fire Emblem game. I'd say it ties with Path of Radiance, which is one of my favorites. Still having an itch for the Soulsborne games and having a brand new PS5, I decided to play Demon's Souls Remastered. This was my least favorite of the 3 I played this year. The graphics were to die for. I really could not stop staring around at everything. And of the 3 games, Demon's Souls had some of the best boss battles in the series. But it just wasn't as fun. It wasn't as polished, and I just didn't feel as engaged. Although it does have a really interesting approach to its final boss battle, which I actually loved. The DLC for Final Fantasy VII Remake came out, and of course I jumped all over that. This was a fun detour and a really good glance into kind of the future of the series. Yuffie is such a fun character, and she's gonna bring a new light to the cast for sure. And the entire DLC was worth it for that hidden ending at the end. My biggest issue is this. That did not seem like the Yuffie from the original games. She definitely wasn't so altruistic and cared too much about her companions. I felt like that was part of her progression later on in the game. Another contender for Game of the Year, and a game that I highly recommend to anyone watching this video, is 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim. Vanillaware only makes amazing games, and this might be one of their best. I thought my Game of the Year was set in stone with Bloodborne, but when I picked this thing up, I could not put it down. Now, this is a game that you play for the story. There is gameplay, and it's intriguing and enticing and really fun. But the story, I haven't read a sci-fi novel that's nearly as awesome as this game was. Seriously, there are twists and turns around every corner. You cannot put your controller down. Please, go and buy and play 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim right now. 20 years in the making, I finally beat Paper Mario. I got this game for my N64 when I was a kid and played it, but never beat it. And I finally did. Oh, the partners are so good and the combat is so fun, if not a little simple. My biggest issue is that the leveling is just so slow. It feels like Final Fantasy XI. You level up and you're like, oh my gosh, yeah! And then you forget that you can even level up 10 hours later. Another blast from the past I beat this year was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and the Hyperstones. My first console was the Genesis, and my brother and I beat this constantly. I decided to pull it out and play with my son, and man was it awesome. Just plain simple fun. And that's where all the fun stopped, because next I played Fire Emblem Fates Conquest. I thought Three Houses was my least favorite Fire Emblem, but man, this one takes the cake. This is the most thirsty Fire Emblem I have ever played. Honestly, the female characters stole the show. Pokemon Sword was probably my least favorite game, but I kind of expected it to not be that good. This was probably the most disappointing title of the year for sure. And my disappointment was quickly washed away when I played Mario Odyssey. I know, again, I'm late to the game. I said last year that I don't like 3D Marios. Mario Odyssey proved me wrong. This game was perfect. A little easy, but that's alright. Man, with Mario Odyssey and Breath of the Wild, Nintendo just knocked it out of the park. These games are just perfect. Having a thirst for some good old-fashioned RPGs, I jumped into the Atelier Rizza series. I played Atelier Rizza, Everdarkness, and The Secret Hideout, and was stunned by beautiful graphics, amazing gameplay, and the most chill story I've ever experienced in my life. And if you like breaking games, this is the game for you. You craft items in Atelier Rizza, and I crafted an item that I felt like it was on accident, but it just destroyed everything. There was nothing. The final boss, I soft locked into not being able to attack. It was awesome. It made me feel powerful. At the end of the day, I really enjoyed it, so I jumped right into its sequel, and it was a little bit of a letdown. Atelier Rizza 2, Lost Legends and the Secret Fairy was good. They made some good improvements and added some new fantastic characters. But honestly, it felt like it was rushed out the door. You can see that the devs didn't really think out every minute, and so instead of giving you these really unique situations, they kind of gave you these cut and paste fetch quests. It ended up being pretty predictable. Still, it wasn't a bad experience, just I felt like the first one was better. After that, I went back to my beautiful little PS5 with its beautiful little graphics and played Tales of Arise. This was the first Tales game I have ever fully beaten. The graphics were awesome, and the battle system was fun and weighty and satisfying. But I'll tell you what, 2/3 in, you get about a 2-hour info dump that just completely bogs the story down. It destroyed any enthusiasm I had for the game, and at that point I was just ready for it to be done. Having kind of a bad taste in my mouth though didn't ruin the game for me. This was a really good game. If you like the Tales games, I highly recommend it. And my final contender for Game of the Year was Shin Megami Tensei 5. Screws the story and goes straight for engaging, awesome gameplay. Collecting demons, building your perfect team, balancing stats. If you like any of this, this is the game for you. I could have just walked around for hours. And man, they do not disappoint in the waifu department. The only issue I had with it was I guess it needed a story, and what they gave you was, whatever. And that's everything I beat this year. The 3 games I enjoyed the most were Bloodborne, 13 Sentinels, Aegis Rim, and Shin Megami Tensei 5. And I'd have to say that my game of the year would go to Bloodborne. Having this be my first Souls experience was one of the best choices I have ever made as a gamer. I actually just started Nioh 2 and am loving it as well, and am highly anticipating, as is millions of other people, the release of Elden Ring. Thank you so much for all of your support this year. It means a lot to me. You're going to see a lot of changes coming into the channel coming this next year. I've done a bit of revamp with some of my graphics. I got a new opening and have gotten better recording equipment. So look forward to some better tier lists and video essays coming 2022. Thanks for watching.